All right, guys, welcome to another Buckmasters Outdoor Podcast. We got a good friend, John Ed, from here in Montgomery. He's got a lot of stuff he wants to share with us and tell us today. We got a lot of questions for you, Mr. I'm going to say Mr., like I just said. I'm going to end up saying Mr., but he goes off John Ed. But I got a lot of questions for you, John Ed. And,
well, that's fine, Mr. Cody. I'm just glad to be here. And Miss Alyssa, I'm glad to be here and be a part of this. And thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a lot of friends who've always been with Buckmasters. I've been to the expos, and some of the things not by nature a hunter, I've never had time to get too engaged in that. But I admire it greatly. I've known Jackie. Do y'all know Jackie Bushman?
Just a little bit.
Is he still around here?
He's still around. He floats around from time to time.
He's been a friend for a long time, and he's a great leader. And Dawn Singleton, so I've known a lot of people with Buckmasters, and now I get to meet you too. So thank you for
We are two of the newer faces. The company's been around a while, so I'm sure you've seen us. We moved from off the side of 85 on down, just a little bit on down the interstate here to now where we're at, Synovus building. Yeah, we've got a lot of history with the company, but
Can I just ask a question before we start? You're in a bank building.
Mm-hmm.
Is it easier to borrow money if you're in the building with the bank? Or do they give any of it away?
I wish it was they gave it away for free when you work in a bank.
Yeah.
But
I just wonder that I'm in of all things, I'm next door. I'm at Hennick Furs, and they don't give furs away either. So,
so it's not just us.
It's not just this. But I love your whole setup here.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate it a lot.
Jackie's gonna be really upset when he looks at the podcast lineup and sees that we had you here without him.
Yeah.
while he's on the road in Montana.
Well, I'm going to try to keep it simple if I can, so he can understand it. So when it goes, just
good.
right along, all right?
Well, maybe this is something he can watch or listen to while he's traveling or flying or something back and forth. But John, Ed, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and where you're from. And I know you're obviously from Montgomery, but tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I grew up in 3 big cities, Notasulga, Wetumpka, and Opelika. And when I went to school at Princeton, this graduate degree up there, people were fascinated by those 3. They were fascinated by my language, my accent. In fact, I would have guys say, look, we'll buy you lunch if you'll just talk for a little while. So I could talk Southern all the time and got a few free lunches out of it. But I really mostly grew up in Opelika. My dad was a pastor, moved there when I was in the 7th grade, and we stayed there 12 years. So I went through high school, college, and all in Opelika. I decided early God called me to be a minister, and so my decisions were really rather easy because I knew where I was going when I got out of high school. And I went to college. I loved sports, played basketball, and had scholarship offers to several schools, for that.
Impressive.
And almost went to Alabama. I had a scholarship offer there. The Rocket 8, Johnny D was the coach, and they had just won the SEC. And then he told me, he said, now look, I want you to come here, but I'm leaving. He went to the pros. I said, ooh, I don't want to do that. So I went to a junior college. He told me, he said, the best basketball you're going to find is up at Young Harris College. I went there. Great basketball school. I didn't know it was such a good institution. And it was a strong Christian Methodist school. And it was one of the best things that ever happened when I went to Young Harris. Was there 2 years, played tennis and basketball. Then I had 2 more years and had some opportunities. And Huntington College was having its first basketball team ever.
Wow.
Organized, and the coach there was Neil Posey. When I was in high school, I'd played against Lanier. He coached at Lanier, and he asked me, gave me a scholarship there. So I went to Huntington. Then from there, I went to Emory to seminary for 3 years and had a great thing. Jackie would like this. Emory is such a high academic school that even the physical education professors have to have a PhD.
Oh, wow.
I mean, so the tennis
coach.
The PE coach had to have a PhD. So the tennis coach had to go back and get his doctorate. He had a master's. And they asked me, would you coach the tennis team so they didn't have to hire anybody and they'd hold the job for him when he got back in a couple of years. So it was ideal for me. I'd be at the tennis court anyway. So I was over there and had an excellent job to get through seminary. And I enjoyed coaching the team, played a lot of tennis. I've always enjoyed the competitive part. Basketball through college was great. In fact, I had an opportunity to play with all-star team from the U.S. We went to the different countries in Asia and played the Olympic teams for Japan and Korea and the
that's pretty dang cool.
Philippines and Taiwan. But we would have 15 minutes at halftime and we'd give a Christian witness. And so we had thousands of people. We played to the largest crowd in Araneta Coliseum in the Philippines. They had the best team in Asia. And we played about 4 or 5 games there, sold out. And they could seat 17 to 20,000 people.
Oh.
They were really
That's
great.
impressive.
But to have a chance to give a witness to that kind of thing, you don't have those kind of opportunities here in America.
No doubt.
So that was a great thing. And then after I finished Emory, I decided I'd get I was single, didn't have any debt, had good grades, so I decided I'd go ahead and get another degree at an Ivy League school. Went to Princeton, got a degree, and then I came out and started serving churches. I was an associate here in Montgomery at Capitol Heights Methodist for 2 years. I was in Mobile for 4 years, and then in Phoenix City for 2 years, and then I came to Montgomery in 1972 to Fraser.
Wow.
And I've been here ever since. I was pastor for 36 years. In the Methodist Church, we have mandatory retirement. You got to retire at age 70.
Really?
And so I had to retire, and a group of guys said, why don't you do a leadership ministry and a nonprofit? So they formed a board, and so I was retired for about 4 days, and then we started this ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just thoroughly enjoyed it for the last 16 years. And we can talk about that a bit later.
No,
if you want to.
I would love
Yeah,
to. Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
what I'm
Well,
most
yeah,
excited about diving into.
Okay. Well, let me tell you a couple of things about it. I started out traveling and training pastors, trained about 12,000 pastors really around the world. But I got involved with Dr. Bill Bright, who was the big campus crusade, a visionary person. He had this vision of starting 5 million churches. That's an M, million.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And winning 1 billion new believers and do it in about 8 years. And I happened to be the Methodist he knew, and he said, would you serve on our group? I said, I would do anything, Bill Bright said. I mean, he was like God,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So I said, yes, sir. He invited me to a meeting, and there were about 110 people there. And I walked in and looked around. There were all the folks I had read about from around the world, had heard and had seen. But of course, and then here I was with them. I felt like a mule at the Kentucky Derby when I walked in there. I mean, here I was on that group with them. And so we started, and part of my responsibility was India. And I went to India, I guess, 6 times, and would train pastors. And over there's so many people. The church I was in, we had 3,000 pastors would come for a week. And let me tell you, when those Indian pastors came, they didn't take out their cell phones. They didn't get up and drink coffee. I mean, they were eager to learn. And I discovered most of them knew more than I did. But the church I was in, I preached there on Sunday. Do you know how many people they had in that one church on Sunday morning? They averaged a little over 46,000 people.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and just, it's amazing. You know how many parking places they had?
How many?
1. Now, in America, if you hadn't got enough parking places for folks to get close, they're not going to come. Here, nobody had a parking place. They came.
How awesome is that?
They came
That's
on
so cool.
motor scooters, bikes. They came in multi-transit. They had multiple worship services, and I've got pictures. They'd go out, one side is exit, and the other side was entrance. And you'd see these thousands of folks going out this way, and another 1,000 coming in on the other side. It looked like an Auburn, Alabama football game, really. It was
That
just
is impressive.
Now that church has grown. This was about 5 years ago. It's grown tremendously. They've now built a church that seats 55,000 folks, and they have multiple services. Now, I mean, that's incredible. We talk about a big church here. If you got 500 folks.
Well, like our church has 45 people in it.
We
It's
go to
just
we
little.
go to a little United Methodist Church.
But it's we love it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's impressive. So what about like a language?
Well, it's always through an interpreter.
Okay,
And
that's
so
what I was
you
about to
say
say. That's a
but
lot of
now-
interpreting.
Yeah. Well, you do that, but then you in this church they have multiple services, and they have one English
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many people in India that want to learn and speak. So, and then there are also a couple of languages in India. So they had they really had 3 different language services.
Wow.
And all of them. But guess what? Do you know what was the most popular service there? It was in Chennai, India. The most popular service is the 5 a.m.
Whoa.
because, for one reason, there's no air conditioning and it's cooler. You can imagine the 3 o'clock in the afternoon
When there's
worship
thousands.
service, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just a fascinating place. India's just booming. I could tell you
Gosh.
hours of stories. I mean, I was there to teach these guys, and man, some of them, what they went through, some of the persecution. I'll just tell you, there was one guy, I've got pictures of him, handsome guy. He went to a community, and they said, "You can't come here." They broke his legs and crushed his feet. And so he went and had all these surgeries for about 2 years, and as soon as he got to where he could navigate, he came back to the same community. And because of what he had endured, they said, "Hey, come ahead." And that guy, in the first year, he baptized something like 2,000 people. The church just flourishing, and he still hobbles a bit when he.
So
when
what
he
did they
walks.
do that for?
Well,
because of
to
his-
try to keep him. They just didn't want the Christian faith.
So
Now-
that's
now
just
let me
crazy
t-
to me.
yeah.
It's like how that. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that's been years ago, but
Yeah.
still,
Well, it wasn't
you don't.
many
See,
years ago.
I'm just saying, you
Yeah.
don't see that in the States here. It's just something
Yeah.
people are numb to, and they're just like, it just feels like it's,
Well, what happens is in India, for example, see this. If you get into northern India, you're right near Pakistan, and a lot of these folks would run across the border and do stuff, and then leave. You don't have the law enforcement, but despite that, the church in India just flourished, just is growing. Churches everywhere. I mean, these pastors, they are so excited in what they do. And then I was in South America in some churches, so I enjoyed that a lot. That going and training pastors. And I'm talking too much. So
No,
you're
I am.
talking enough.
I am literally amazed. I feel like I keep getting chills just over and over.
I know it's
But
just.
it was very exciting. And then let me tell you this: I wrote a book. One thing I decided in retirement, they said if your mind stays active, you won't get dementias quickly.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, then I'm going to write a book every year. So every year I've written a book.
What a goal.
And I wrote a book about 6 years ago on change
Mm-hmm.
and know what to change and what not to change. And if you don't change, you don't stay in business,
Right.
and church. So then after about a year, my wife asked me, she said, have you read your book? I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you wrote about change, but you're still doing the leadership ministry like you were doing it 5 years ago. And
Oh, wow.
you said if you do things today like you did 5 years ago, you probably won't be around 5 years from now. She said, why don't you try using the internet? And I thought, I didn't even know how to spell internet.
Yeah.
I don't even have a computer.
Yeah.
She said, why don't you begin with just a video? And I said, okay. She said, let's get it done right. It was done professionally. And she has a little business. She said, I'll pay for it. And so I said, nobody will watch that. So we did the first one. Now, I'm a Methodist. And I think y'all said you
are.
might be Methodists generally have a short attention span. So what I started doing all that, we called it Got a Minute. It was a minute long.
Got a minute. Oh,
So
my goodness, so cute.
it's a minute long. And so we did the first one. Do you know we had 21,000 people watch the first one? And I thought, whoa.
It's impressive.
So from that, I said, what I need to do. And so we started looking at it. So today, right now, about 4 years later, I still do the Monday morning Got a Minute, and it's grown. Then I started doing radio things, about 5 radio stations. 2 of them here in Montgomery are WLWI and also the Fox.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a Got a Minute on it every morning, but we also put it on Facebook and Instagram and
Where, well,
All
we
those
need
other
our
platforms,
listeners
yeah.
to
Yeah.
know what platform is that? Like the handle
Yeah.
on Instagram, Facebook.
Okay, well, let me just say, my website has all of that on it.
Okay.
And it's difficult to remember. Now, remember, I'm 86 years old. So my website is called johnedmathison.org.
Yes, sir.
That helps me remember my name and remember the.
And we'll link it. We'll link it in the description and
all
all that, so that ain't no problem.
So I do that radio stuff, but it's better. It's easier to click on Facebook or
Right.
Instagram and watch it because you can do that anytime.
That'd be me.
And
Yeah,
so
totally.
I started doing that, and then I started doing a blog every week. Well, a lot of newspapers have picked it up, and I do that every Wednesday. But the point I'm going to make is I wasn't doing any of that stuff 6 or 7 years ago, but the change of utilizing technology today is definitely, and now we are reaching. Fortunately, my board said, let's hire somebody that knows what they're doing. And you write it, do it, record it, but let them determine all these things, when to do it, where to do it.
Yeah, it's hard
all
to
that
keep
stuff.
up with
I don't
it. It is.
know. I don't understand all those things. But at any rate, so they do that. They're expensive, but they reach people. Right now, we're reaching about 100,000 people a week.
Wow.
And that's better than you could do in a local church or something else.
Absolutely.
So God has just blessed. I also started doing a little video during the pandemic, during the COVID, called Good News. And I planned to do it just during Good News, but we had so many people start watching it every day. And it's just on Facebook. And it's not elaborately done. It's just with a phone and a brief, and everything's around a minute. It's about 1.5 minutes long.
Well,
In fact, people kid me sometimes. They said, "You're the only got a minute that goes more than a minute."
I love that concept, though, because that is true.
So we do it. We call it Good News. Good News at 10. And then, Mitty, what's really I'm excited about and interesting, at the end of June, a couple of months ago, when they discovered, they give you a report, everything that's going, we were all sort of blown away by how effective. But the most surprising thing was how many young people watch all of this, and it was a little above twice what the normal average is nationwide. So they said, why don't you tag something for young people? So I said, what about they said, do a podcast. Now, I didn't know what a podcast was. Here we are on one right now,
Yeah.
so I've just learned. But so I've done 3 of them, and what I've done is taken outstanding young people. I named it Go-Getters and Go-Givers. And go-getters are folks that are going to be successful. But you need to be givers, not getters. And so I've had 3 of them. It's taken outstanding young people who've had tremendous difficulty. I mean, single parent family, adopted, and all of these kind of things. But how did you handle it? So,
Yeah.
And we've got kids galore watching it because here are kids that have navigated tough times and what they've gone through, and it's been a sort of an insight to me. I've been inspired by hearing these kids. I didn't know there were kids like that, and I'm very convinced what we need to do is have more of the good stories of good young people, good things happening. They hear enough bad stuff.
Totally.
And all the bad things. And I mean, here in this city of Montgomery, there's a lot of good things going on, but sometimes you only read about and hear about the bad things. So I appreciate what you're doing with this podcast. I appreciate all that you're doing. We need to just beat the band hard on the good things of life, and there is hope, there's joy, there's love. If people could get into that, it'd be a whole lot better. Now I've talked too much.
No, you're
I
fine.
apologize.
I've got-
gosh, keep talking.
Yeah, I know
Please,
you're
yeah.
fine. I've got 1,000 questions. I feel like 86 years of knowledge, 86 years of history of just
I
seeing
know we
and
need
doing.
to
and
capitalize on it.
That's
No, but let me tell you now, I think I told you, I had a birthday, and let me tell you this thing about being 86. My candles cost more than the cake did.
Had a bonfire going.
Yeah,
Oh, it
like
sure
a
did.
thing.
And,
Roman candle.
And I learned another great thing I'll teach your audience. If you ever hear an 85-year-old man say, I can do anything today I was doing when I was 65. He wasn't doing much at 65. You know that.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, age is, some of the best. When you got age, you got more experience, more time, more energy, more knowledge, more finances, more. You got more stuff to do. And a lot of people say, "I'm going to sit back." If you sit back, you die. And so retire. Did a little article on it the other day. Retire is to retire. Get tired about something else and redo it and keep doing it. So I'm having the time of my life at 86.
That's great, man.
Well, I've got to know.
I've got questions.
I've got to know.
Let me ask the first one.
What was the good news? What was the latest good news segment that you did? Let's share it.
On good news, the greatest good news is that I'd usually take just a verse of scripture and look at today's good news is, and when you start reading the Bible every day, there's just a virtual plethora of good news things.
There is.
And I'll just share this, the blog that came out yesterday. My dad said, don't ever say, have a good day. People say, have a good day.
Yeah.
Because if you say, have a good day, that sort of indicates you can sit back and wait and see what's going to happen. He said, always say, make it
a good
day.
That's a good.
And that means you got to cooperate with God and do some things that are like that so you can make every day.
Yeah.
And today is the best day to start making every day
a good day.
Oh, I love that mentality
awesome.
so much.
So, like a question you're talking about, and this is going to be a hard one to answer, but I want your answer and your thought on this. So,
well, you better get somebody else. It's very hard.
Us millennials, we're millennials, okay? But you hit it like on the head of, a minute. I mean, a minute, 2 minutes, that's all you're getting of me. Like it is, and that's just today's world. It's just on your social, on your phone. You're just sitting there, you're consuming content. You go to the next. And you're retaining what you want to hear, and you just keep going. But, I look at that, and that people are consuming that content, and I see that's been successful for you now, and you're reaching a lot of people. But how would you relate that to like someone going into an actual church setting and sitting down? Like, what's the differentiating? Like somebody who's stuck on that, they're like, well, I'm consuming my content sitting in a deer stand, reading or watching one of your take a minute, anything, scripture, anything of whatever they're doing. Do they? In their heart, they're like, man, but I'm compelled. Like, I feel like I need to go to church. I need to sit in a church. What are they going to be able to get from accessing that on their phone versus sitting in a church setting?
Well, I'd say very quickly is that we need each other. And one of the things that's happened following the pandemic is loneliness, mental health, folks feeling isolated, and people, when you start becoming isolated, you get more isolated.
Right.
And we're a people who have to have relationships. In church, you have real relationships. The thing I've discovered is that in a church, when people get into a small group, that becomes the best thing that they do, because when they knew. I had a really tough situation 2 or 3 weeks ago, but the person made this. Let me use another example. One of the kids I interviewed was a boy who is at Auburn, and all of a sudden he got headaches, had a brain tumor, cancer, went and had the tumor removed, went to all the cancer stuff and all that. But his buddies prayed for him and surrounded him with prayer. And other people did. I happened to meet him.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he went back to the doctor and they can't find any cancer. Now, in the interview, he said to John Ed, he said, I want to talk about prayer. But he said, I want you to ask me a question. Ask me, am I glad that I had the brain tumor? Now, what kid's going to say, ask me, am I glad? And he said, I am glad because it got my attention. I was just going through life like everybody else, and it was going to turn out to be a mess. But when I got the brain tumor, I thank God for letting me do that, because it caused me to think. And now I've got my priorities. I've got my friends. I discovered how many friends love me.
Totally.
And I had another case where in that similar situation, somebody said, we always wondered why we were going through this. and it was preparing us for what we just had to face last week.
It's crazy how
And
that
God's
works.
always using something to prepare us for something
Yeah.
that He's got in store for
And
us.
I knew the answer to that in my heart. I know, like we, down there in just south of Troy, we go to this little Oak Methodist church. Just got, like we said, 45, 50 people. But us being able to go there and have a community, our family,
We have a family
yeah,
there,
our family are 4 hours away, and we have her family's 2 hours away. So they're our family. They're our church family. And then I think, just speaking on that question, because I know that's a question a lot of people ask, but having that church family and that knit tight right there, I mean, it just means so much. I mean, be able to go to church, because we're not all perfect. We're all sinners. And, going to church, you're trying to be with other sinners. You're trying to learn from it and figure out what you need to do better as a Christian. So, but I just wanted to ask that and see what your thought on
well,
that.
let me tell you, I'm a strong believer of the importance of doing that. And let me, conversely, today, the Sabbath Sunday has just about been wrecked. I think it's been a sad part for our nation. A buddy of mine the other day said, he said something about, the worship service that changes your life. I don't know which one it'll be, but I promise you it won't be the one you missed.
Yeah, totally.
And so you never know. And I've got a good friend right now who was an alcoholic, gambling. I mean, he was just destitute. And he was with a guy. They were off on a golf trip, and on Sunday morning, he said, "I'm going to beat you today." And the boy said, "I'm not going to be there." Well, it's technically Saturday night. He said, "I won't be there tomorrow." He said, "Why?" He said, "The company's giving us this free resort down here in Florida." He said, "I'm going back to Montgomery." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because my family goes to church on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And I've got 2 kids, and I'm driving back to Montgomery." This guy was a great athlete. Reese Carr, played at Alabama. But he said, "I'm doing that." And the guy that was listening couldn't get over somebody, and that pricked his imagination. To make a long story short, that man has made a faith commitment and is one of the most dynamic. But he said, it goes back. What if Reese Carr had said, "I think I'll just stay here and play golf with you tomorrow"? What would have happened in Ken Love's life? But just the commitment to being in worship, and you grow.
No doubt.
I just used to tell people, this is spiritual food. If you don't come to church, just don't eat any meals during the week physically. And I bet you ain't going to do that.
Right.
But
That's a great way to put that.
We need spiritual wherever
need
age
each other.
we are. That's right.
What kind of questions you got next? Your turn.
Oh, I had written down so many. I think the biggest thing I wanted to focus on, and I thought we would kind of dive into it prior so we can tie back in and maybe loop this in there, but with your ministry, what is your main focus now? From what I was reading, you're very big on leadership and making changes in young men's and I assume women's lives too, like myself, through leadership. So what does that look like?
Right. Well, any organization rises or falls on leadership. That whether it's a church, if it's a football team, if it's a business, and if you don't have leadership, you flounder. And if you flounder, you generally go under. But it's to try to help raise up leaders. And I've turned to a lot, just as I said, in 4 or 5 years, in very short, succinct kind of ways. Hey, here's what's happening. What can I do about it? What am I going to do about it?
Right.
And everybody can do something that can make a difference in somebody's life. I did a story a couple of weeks ago about the little boy that's Down syndrome. And he's the cutest little guy. And so he goes to Major League Baseball park to throw out the first pitch, and they give him a uniform. And he's just cute as he can be in that Down syndrome. And they said, "You got anything to say?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "If a Down syndrome boy can come throw out the first pitch at a ball game, what can you do?" And so,
Wow.
everybody, we all need, I think, to be challenged by somebody who is setting the bar high, and that something that we can do.
Who has set the bar high to you?
Well, my dad, and I grew up in my home where he always set the bar high. Sports had so much to do. I wrote a book a couple of years ago, and I'm just finishing a book right now on life lessons learned from sports. and there are 54 of them, and all of them are a couple of pages long, but it's about some athlete in some sport who has experienced something in a Christian perspective, and what lesson can I learn from that? Now, all of these people have set the bar high, and when you set the bar high, I'll just give an example right here in Montgomery. Last Friday, there's a boy who wants to work has a ministry with people who've come out of prison, and they all go back to prison, many of them. And so he wanted to stop that. So has a ministry of that. So he decided to raise awareness. The world's record for most foul shots made in a 24-hour period was 20,000. He said, I'm going to try to break that. Now, 20,000 foul shots made in a 24-hour period. And so he had a whole group of folks, Guinness World Record, all of that was there. I mean, they had cameras everywhere. He asked me, I want you to come out and pray. And I prayed for the basketballs and for him. And last Saturday, 3 days, whatever that was, 3 or 4 days ago, on Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock with 1 second to go, he was at 21,000. And he made 21,001.
Oh, my
Now, his
goodness.
goal was 22,000.
Oh.
And now he broke the record,
Right,
which
it
was
was
20.
Yeah.
But he wanted 22. You know why?
Well,
Because 22,000 people got out of prison and went back. And he wanted to shoot a foul shot and make it for every man and woman. Recidivism had gone back to prison. And I asked him, I said, now, are you trying to do away with recidivism? He said, no. Get this. He said, I want every person to have faith in Christ, have the opportunity to grow in that faith and to get an education and to get a job. And if you do that, you won't have recidivism.
that's right.
And so that's what he made that to raise money. By the way, Bruce Pearl, who's a basketball coach at Auburn, he pledged $22,000 if he could do it. And then I told him, I said, Coach Pearl, if you're smart, you'll ask this boy to come help your players. He shoots 90% from the foul line. I said, you need to come back. So you'll get
5 back to back.
You'll get more than you. Well, I was over there and watched him for a while, and in fact, he asked me. He said, "I want you to pray, and I want you to pray." You know, it was for everybody. Now, can you think if you think that's not hard? Every foul shot, you come up on your toes, you shoot it. Now, if you don't think that's tough, just try doing that without a ball. And do 10,000 of those and see if you can.
Just without a ball.
Right,
yeah.
that's what I was thinking, the body exhaustion.
Or throw a ball, a basketball against the wall 15,000 times. Your arm will fall off. But he did it. But he did it for the purpose
That's what I was about to say.
of, hey, this money is going to be used. And he raised about $200,000 because these people stay about a year in a program. But he's doing something simple, outside the box. And so nothing in life helps you as much to be happy. It's when you lose your life doing what God called you to do, God's purpose.
Right. So
We all have
powerful.
one, that's for sure.
I had another question too. Just we've been married, or will be married for 5 years in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I feel
Now,
like
you got that 2 weeks. Don't forget
Yeah,
that
in
now.
about two- in about-
I've got to remember. I'm telling him.
for young couples like us, we've got 2 little kids. What would be your greatest advice with
You ready?
86 years of wisdom?
Right. Yeah.
But, well, I'd like to ask and add to that. So, like, how this resonates and ties with us and buckmasters and hunters and the outdoor, community and stuff is, so faith, family, and the outdoors. So, like, us as a family, we have a 3.5-year-old girl, little boy, and all that, and then faith, our relationship with the Lord and all that, and then also just hunting. I mean, how do you balance that in her question, tying that together with that? But, like, it's important, and I know the answer to a lot of these questions I'm asking, but, like,
Or you think you do.
I think I do. But balancing that, in the all 3 of those and juggling them, what's first, what's second, what's third, how do you keep those in that order? And it's important.
All right. And let me quickly say to know the answer is different from doing the answer.
That's so
and
true.
That's what's really my challenge to me.
Mine, totally
and
mine.
All of us. But first, priority. You have to set what is first. Paul said, "This one thing I do every day when I get up, I'm going to say, now what's the most important thing to do today? God, what should it be?" Now, if you don't make the priority, you don't ever get around to it. The tyranny of the urgent. We got to go do this and this. As a young family, the best thing I would say is, number one, that you and the kids know, hey, our priority is being a godly home in which Christ's way is taught and lived. And then secondly, we're going to do things together, and a time just to study the Bible or read something. And there's so many things that are appropriate for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Another very important thing, is, of course, is to pick your friends well. My experience is that we become like the folks we associate with.
100%.
And if we associate with a couple where the man criticizes his wife, you're going to criticize you. I mean, we tend to adopt. So surround yourself. Now, what happens then is you give to them, they give to you, and you both grow. And the good thing is I would have just fun time with the family. Mm-hmm. That's very important. You don't have to go to Disney.
Right.
It's the best time of life. I remember, now this when I was a kid in the first grade, we lived in Notasulga. I'll never forget. My daddy said, "Now, John Ed, boy, we're going to have a big trip this weekend." I thought, wow, that's good. Yeah, now, hey, we're going to really have a great time. You know what we did? That trip was to go to Tuskegee to go to the movie. Now, this was back in the day, and that was, for me, like going to Disney, to go from Notasulga
to Tuskegee
to go to the movie. And, but my folks planned stuff like that, that we're going to go and do this. And so I would say, I don't know if that answered the question.
It does.
Hey, center on Christ, your priority. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest struggle I have personally is to let the first thing slip to second or to third.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you're on a downhill slope.
You are, and that's something, we all struggle with, and I struggle with today. It's just so hard. Like, it's something that we started doing, recently. Was like, I told her just the other day, I was like, I want to try to make it a goal. Every morning when you wake up, you send me a Bible verse that you like or you saw or you read this morning. And she sent it to me. Then the next day it's my turn. And so we alternate. That's one little thing we just started. And we're trying to stay disciplined and do that, but that's a fun little thing. But then also, recently I've been weighing on my heart is the daily prayer. Our little 3.5-year-old girl, she says God is great, God is good, let us thank Him. But then I'm thinking to myself too, yeah, that's a great prayer, it's good. But how about, what if I say, this is what we're thankful for, baby. This is what we're partaking in. This is why we're able to, because of this. And actually breaking it down for her and doing that daily. Versus just reciting a same old prayer that just and there's nothing against that. But I think that's another challenge. I am challenging myself, just those little things, getting it more to where it's center of the household, as a father and as a man of the household, Yeah,
hey, that is so good. And even though they memorize something, they're doing it, but
they don't. It doesn't really click with her. She doesn't. She understands who Jesus is. She understands she's praying, but it's just it's kind of like a song. It just doesn't. It's not as true and genuine. I just feel. I think I could do better.
Okay, but you can just ask her a little question.
Mm-hmm.
What are we thankful for? What did God do? Tell God stories. What do you feel like God did for you yesterday?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, they begin to say, gracious, I didn't. If we really believe that all things work together, we ought to talk about all things, and that God's going to make them work together if, we follow His purpose for our lives. And everything for you two, I admire you all and where you are. Everything that happens is an opportunity to teach something And guess who learns the most?
We do.
Yeah.
You know,
We
in
do.
those little things. And
Definitely.
that's what I discovered.
Absolutely.
And you
totally
go
agree with
back
that.
to your friend. You said surround yourself with friends.
Right.
Like, and I mean this genuinely. This is my friend, and I will say probably my only friend, other than my own mom and dad. Like, I don't
say
talk,
that.
and I hate being. But that's I will say that. Like we are like each other, and we've developed to be like each other because of that.
Then you're gonna have a lot more anniversaries. You're gonna have to remember.
Yeah, I hope.
Because that's really good. But you know, so many couples begin to hang around with couples that are not going where they want to go.
Right.
And I hate to say this, but generally negative folks have a bigger influence on positive folks than positive folks can have on negative people. And you just have to surround, and the more you surround yourself with winners,
Mm-hmm.
the more you're going to be a winner.
Right.
The
No
more
doubt.
you surround us, you know, with that, I think it just makes picking good friends. I had a couple that sent me an email, I guess, about 2 months ago, said, "You married us 40 years ago.
Wow.
And you don't remember this, but you told us about picking friends. And that's been the most important thing in our marriage, that we've always, every time we go out with somebody, we ask, hey, is this who we ought to be going out with?"
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And they just said that.
That's awesome.
And so I've become much more committed
Mm-hmm.
to that, because it just works.
It is. It's very, very true. Very true.
As a mom too, I did have another big question for you. As far as our daughter was born during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
a very worrisome time, a very stressful time for everyone in
Yeah.
the world. And then now having my son, our son 14 weeks ago, in a time that feels very politically heavy, feels very morally heavy because of what's becoming popular in culture. What is your stance on worry from a mom who feels like she worries every day from the minute her her feet hit the floor and lays her head down at night?
Well, the problem with worry, that's the most Googled word in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
People are more worried today. And just in Matthew, the 6th chapter, the Sermon on the Mount, I can just say, Jesus said, "Why are you so anxious? Why do you worry?" And it's all in our thinking. Our thinking determines what we do. And if we think about circumstances, we're going to always be dragged down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, if there's a storm coming in, we got inflation, we got a president, we don't know what's going to happen in the world. You know, if you focus on that, that'll drag you down. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he.
Right.
But very clearly, Jesus just said about the worry, look at the birds, look at the flowers in the field. He said, now, don't you look at temporal things, look at the eternal things, what's most
Totally.
important. And that's where he then said,
Find
seek
your peace.
first.
Mhm.
And so now that's, if you let Satan control your thinking,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be in trouble. And we all have to struggle with that every day.
It is, and like something, and I've told her this, but something my mom always told me just growing up was, there's more things to worry about. There's always more things to worry about, and that always has been true. And I just look at yourself right now, the poor people that got hit by that hurricane, and just so much, the Iran, everything Israel that's going on. There's so much bad stuff going on, and you just look. I've just heard stories this past week about the new hurricane in the Gulf, and how mothers are writing on their children's chests their name and date of birth, just in case something was to happen. They can be identified if they were to pass in the hurricane. Like that right there, that's hard to think about. But like, there's more things to worry about other than your little sentimental stuff that's just right here day to day. There's more things to worry about.
And worry will drag you down.
It will.
And it will get you. And I want to be honest with you, it's hard to always handle it, and it's easy to be bombarded with all we are from television, radio, and conversation. I mean, if you go over here and eat at Chappie's, you'll hear people talking about how bad things are.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
And I think we have to keep ourselves in a frame of mind of what's really important. And Lord, what do you want me to do
To serve you
today?
Yes, sir.
And the more you serve, the less you have time
to worry
and be anxious. And that's just, and I think it's more prevalent today than ever before because of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Happiness is different from holiness. Happiness depends on circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from a word hap, which means what's going on. And you can't control what's going on. Holiness has to do with who we worship. And we're in control of that. And things we can't control, we need to let go. Let God handle that. He's in charge.
Totally.
But the other things that I need to worship, look for, be targeted, that's a whole different perspective of life.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
That's so good. What's your favorite quote? I know you have a quote. What's your favorite
quote?
A
quote or a Bible verse?
Bible verse quote. What's your favorite?
I think probably.
I know that's a hard question.
I love the Philippians. I can do all things through Christ. And people leave that part out. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest problem I confess to you that I've struggled with is the Bible says, when I'm weak, then I'm strong. Well, in America, we don't want to be weak. We want to be strong. But what he's saying is when I'm weak enough that I can't do something, and I can then admit, God, you've got to do it, then I'll trust you and I'll be the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
But we have this old idea, I'm going to take care of things myself and, pull ourselves up by the bootstraps.
Totally.
We don't even have any boots.
Yeah.
So we've just got to, God, I want to trust you in every day. And there's an interesting thing, and I won't go into it now, but there's a physical reaction when you wake up in the morning, the first thoughts you have, and it releases, and I've got all of this written down, but at any rate, that will cause you to become, will lead to depression, actually chemicals, or if you start out, God, thank you, on a positive note, you release other
Endorphins.
I think it's like the same. You get up and make your bed in the mornings. It just helps set your mind to you're clean, you're started. That way, when you get home, you can start fresh.
Right.
Like I've heard about that, but I think it is endorphins.
But it's mentally. I mean,
it's a mental thing.
It's not just mental; it's physical.
Yep.
And so the good thing, a guy told me the other day. He said, if you get off on the wrong foot, you're in trouble. He said, what you need to do every morning is put your left leg up in the air, roll out of bed, and then you'll start on the right foot. So if you get it going, you got to do it, doing it the right way.
That's awesome.
But that's so important.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, this was a big one that I know that your dad he really shaped, along with the Lord, he really shaped what you knew you wanted your future to look like. But were there any pivotal moments in your life that you feel like almost took you off track and you or the Lord brought yourself back on, or has it always been steady for you leading into ministry?
Mine has been, let me say this, the most dangerous thing in my life, in your life, is not adversity, it's success. Because the more successful we get, the more we think we've got it. And it's easy. One of the most important letters is why. The why. It can spell Y-O-U-R. Look what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Or it can spell our, O-U-R. Look what God and I are doing.
Yeah.
And success is so tough because it's easy to be puffed up. It's easy. And that's what happened to Adam and Eve. It's so tough. Satan said, God ain't going to do that to you. You're not going to die. Why do you think that? And, well, I can handle it. I can do it. And that's sometimes the toughest thing to do. I had good coaches. I had one coach that just, humility. Look at all the losses in football this past week.
I know.
I mean, everywhere.
There's some upset homes.
But I mean, because, now why did you get upset? Hey, you're not going to beat us. I mean, we can't be beat. Anybody can be beaten anytime. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing we have to realize. And God, today, I want to be on your side. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice, be glad in it, and then set the path for following it.
Yeah, and being
Put the
intentional.
right foot forward.
Okay. Is there any tidbit of wisdom or knowledge that you want to leave the listeners with today that maybe you haven't shared on Got a Minute or Good News or anything else?
I think I've told you more than I know today. But I guess that just to conclude, I've learned in 86 years that if you put God first, your family second, and then your work third, and then whatever else comes along, and keep those in order, you're going to come out ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Now, let me say it's not easy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the path that we need to take. And I'm real heavy on attitude, because our minds, what we think is what we become.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be constantly dealing with that. That's why pornography, that's why so much other things have gripped the life of America and just put us enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think, what you think about is what you're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Gosh, it's so good.
Man, it's been such a privilege to get to
It doesn't
talk to
feel
you.
like this is a podcast. It just feels like we've just been talking to a good friend. I wish we could do this more often.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all. Thank you for letting me do this.
Of course.
I've been trying to do a podcast, so I've been watching y'all to see how you're supposed to do it. I've never sat on this side of the table.
Well.
But I just appreciate y'all, and thank you so
Yeah,
much.
man.
It's good to see folks like you all. And I thought, my first thought when whoever sent me the note asked me about doing it, I do basketball and tennis, and football, and y'all do hunting, fishing, and all. So what we're going to have in common? Well, what I've discovered here is that that's not what we have in common. We have in common life.
That's right.
And
Life.
so I was a little concerned, seriously, about. I asked you if I needed to wear a camouflage shirt, but I don't have camouflage shirts.
Oh.
Well,
So,
it all ties together. Like you said, faith, family, work, keep
Right
it in that
together.
order. I mean, and your other hobbies is what, the only thing that we have different. We all going to try
Except for
to.
Jackie. He could talk to you about tennis all day.
Jackie could talk to you about anything. But
Yeah.
we're at the end goal, though. What I wanted this to be about was how do we get to the end goal, which is to be in the heaven and the kingdom of heaven. So that is awesome. You shared a lot of good stuff. I love it.
Well, thank
Any more
you.
questions?
Okay. And if people just go to my website.
Yeah, I'm going to link all that in there.
There are 2 or 3 things any day and every week, that deal in. I just, if it can be helpful, God use it.
That's right.
Gosh, I love that.
Well, guys, we appreciate that. Concludes another Buckmasters Outdoor Podcast. We hope y'all watch the next one. We got plenty more coming to you. Thank you, John Ed. Greatly do.
Thank y'all.